Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome to the Holyrood Sources podcast, where we take you inside Scottish politics. I'm Calum Macdonald. Hello, and this is Geoff Aberdeen, who was Chief of Staff to the First Minister Alex Salmond. Hello, Geoff.
Good morning.
And Andy Maciver, who was Director of Communications for the Scottish Conservatives. Hello, Andy. You're on mute, Andy.
Hello.
There's a bit of a Sean Connery accent there.
Slick operation,
Mr.
this
Maciver. But of course, welcome.
The mute button. Hello, listeners.
Thank you for finding us. Thank you for listening. If this is your first time here, press subscribe on whatever app you're listening. You'll get our episodes every single week. We're also on YouTube if you'd like to watch. Later on the podcast, we've got a joint appearance by the new co-leaders of the Scottish Green Party. Gillian Mackay and Ross Greer will tell us about their job sharing, their policy objectives, and their government ambitions as well. You can, of course, WhatsApp us. The number is 0333 404 6507. We want to start today, though, with party conference season, which is almost at a close. The Conservatives have been enjoying their conference in Manchester this week. Party leader Kemi Badenoch has been talking about the need for spending cuts, as well as appealing to younger voters. She announced a £5,000 national insurance rebate to help fund the purchase of a first home. She also set out her party's plan to leave the European Convention on Human Rights and deport 150,000 people a year. But will she be the Conservative leader to deliver those things? Polling this week from YouGov suggests half of Conservative Party members want Miss Badenoch replaced as leader of the party by the time of the next general election. Andy, this has been a battle for relevance, hasn't it, in Manchester the last few days for the Conservatives?
Yes, but they didn't need to see it like that, because we are 4 years away from an election. Nobody is remotely interested in what the Conservative Party has to say at this point in the cycle. And so they should not really feel forced in. Political parties and their memberships have got such an overinflated sense of their importance. And, they're going into this conference and thinking they have some sort of national duty to unveil a raft of policies. They're the only ones who are listening. And in fact, judging by the Hall this week, they weren't listening to themselves either, to be honest with you. So I don't think really it was all particularly necessary. There's a huge amount of scepticism and negativity about Kemi Badenoch. I think Kemi Badenoch actually is just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I think she could, in another era, have been a very, very good leader for the Conservative Party. And I think that, as I say, it's bad luck. They can replace her with Rob Jenrick or anybody else. It will make zero difference, because they are currently caught in an era which they don't understand and which just doesn't really suit them. Guys, they are currently the official opposition in all three parliaments, in Westminster, Holyrood and the Senedd. They are going to be fourth in the Senedd. They could be as low as sixth in Holyrood, and they're going to be, at this point, third or fourth at Westminster. So they're going to be a minority party in all parliaments. I think what they don't realise this week is that this could be one of the last times they actually gather for a conference. It's not a question of when they get back into government. It's a question of, do they actually survive as a political party at this point?
Yeah. I think I was in Manchester the last couple of days, and whatever Kemi Badenoch's ambitions and policy announcements, she is being undermined by the dominating chat everywhere being about when she gets replaced. And so she can announce what she likes from the stage, but anywhere you turn, Conservative Party members, lobbyists, journalists, all of them are talking about replacing her, Geoff. And that is, that's it, isn't it? That means that at some point she's done for.
Well, if you accept the kind of common political wisdom, yes, it is. But I'm just going to say something a wee bit probably controversial and surprising. I actually think she's pretty good.
I agree.
She's made some mistakes in some interviews. I think she talked about Northern Ireland voting for Brexit.
That's right.
Which she didn't, and there's been a couple of faux pas. But actually, I quite like her presence. I quite like her demeanour. I think she's intelligent, and I think they should give her more time. And this is not me, like, as a fan of another football club that's struggling, saying, "Oh, yeah, hold on to the manager. That's great for us."
Yeah.
I mean that in all sincerity. I just think that there's something more there for her to give, and we don't know what's going to happen in politics. yes, the reform juggernaut shows no sign of stopping. But if it did, and it did come unstuck a little bit, I would fancy her to be able to capitalise on that. I just don't see what they gain from trying to change the leader again. It's another tacit admission of failure. And I just don't think Robert Jenrick, or anyone else for that matter, is going to reverse the party's fortunes in any significant way. So I give her a bit more time. If I may just make one other point about the Scottish context as well. I was doing my 5-mile walk on Monday morning, early doors, listening to Good Morning Scotland on BBC Radio, and Russell Finlay's interview came on. And I thought the messaging was really interesting. They'd led with this SNP's a party of loony and woke policies, they're out of touch. And that was their top line. And I just thought, that's so the wrong message if I'm the Tories. You're not going to get votes from SNP voters. You're just not. They need a pretty targeted message 7 months out from an election on their principal opposition, which is the Reform Party, and now to a lesser extent, but still significant, the Labour Party, and why that they're the best alternative to the SNP. That's where he's got to focus his efforts on, not on just simply attacking the SNP. That ain't going to get you anywhere. He needs to be focusing on Reform and Labour. And yes, he came to that in the discussion, but that wasn't the top line they clearly briefed in. And I thought that was a total mistake strategically. That ain't going to get you anywhere.
So yeah, he said things, the SNP's turned into a laboratory for weird and wacky politics. He said John Swinney had been obsessed with breaking up the UK from the age of 15 and probably reckons that Braveheart is a documentary. I mean, among other things, it was a whole speech, of course, but Andy, that's a couple of the lines from it.
Yeah, but it's core vote strategy, right? I mean, the Tories know they're not getting, they're not getting anybody new. This is a question of them trying to hold on to as many of those 31 seats as they possibly can. And the ironic thing, of course, is that in order for the Tories to hold on to as many of those seats as they can, they need John Swinney to do really well. They need SNP ratings to go up. They need independence ratings to go up, because what they want, because they want to rinse and repeat their no to Indy Ref 2 strategy, because it's really all they've had for 15 years. They don't know anything else. They don't have anything else to offer.
Yeah.
So they have to be able to rinse and repeat that strategy. And that's why you'll hear that all the way along. There's going to be no discussion about policy. I can assure you that. None. It'll all be based on the SNP and independence.
Yeah, but Andy, the problem with that is, and I agree, I'm not disagreeing with your analysis. I believe that's why they're doing it as well. But the SNP is winning in the polls. Independence is still a relatively high position, and their vote has plummeted because Reform is snatching votes from them. And so you have to change your strategy. You have to have a much more targeted message on why they should stick with the Conservatives and not go to Reform. And I didn't hear that in that interview, just didn't hear it. And they're very nervous around the rise of Reform. They don't really understand what to put it to, and therefore they're unwilling to challenge them on that territory. And so I feel that is a real strategic error, because the trajectory as is, if polling is to be believed, and local by-election results, is that the strategy ain't working of just talking down the SNP. You have to change.
The other part of this, of course, is that the SNP's conference is this weekend coming. At the time of recording, it's Wednesday morning, the 8th of October. John Swinney's about to outline a bit more of this kind of plan, I suppose, for independence, and it's going to be based on the economy. And so he goes into the party conference with kind of independence, obviously, at the forefront of what he is proposing to his members who are gathering in Aberdeen this weekend. I do wonder, Geoff, whether he is getting a grip on the independence messaging, how you would describe what John Swinney is sort of teeing up for this party conference this weekend.
Yeah, I'll come to the specific question in a second. I think I've spoken to quite a few people in the SNP recently. There's not arrogance at all from them. I think they recognise they're in a fight, but there is a little bit more, shall we say, confidence that they might do okay in the next election, but not owing to their own performance, but because of the demise or shall we say the difficulties that the Labour Party find themselves in at Westminster. I don't think that's good enough. And I just, when push comes to shove, you get into an election contest, you need to have a key mantra, narrative, strategic vision to take into that can be, repeated ad nauseum. And going in and saying, well, we're not the Labour Party, they're really bad, no as bad as us, is not really going to cut it. So I think they need to do a lot more, frankly. There has been signs, and I have said this, that, you know, with the intervention at Alexander Dennis, with his positioning and intervention on whiskey, with this kind of rail fare stuff, you know, the rail fares pledge really actually reminded me of the kind of campaigning methods that we took into 2007, 2011 Parliament, and it reminded me of that. And I said, so there are signs that they're starting to create that standing up for Scotland mantra, but there's a lot of work to be done. On independence, I think the reason he's coming out today, frankly, to say this is because there's a lot of disquiet amongst the branches about this strategy of vote SNP for a majority. And what he's trying to do is just calm the horses ahead of party conference to make sure that, you know, that the infighting, but the disquiet doesn't elevate itself into public forum at the weekend. Now, wait and see what this is. Quite interesting to see what's in this, particularly with the economy front of mind. He was at this investment summit yesterday that I attended, but I think that's the real reason for this, Calum. I don't think anything more than that. Try and calm the horses ahead of the weekend.
Fair. Andy, what does Swinney need this conference to be?
I mean, I think he'd obviously prefer that there wasn't much noising off, but is anybody, you know, are there any very serious central people, powerful people in the party or in the movement who are against him and his strategy? I mean, they might have a bit of disquiet about this majority strategy that he announced a few weeks ago, and we raised a few eyebrows about it on this podcast. And but as I mentioned, I think there is a sort of medium-term game based on what's going to happen at Westminster during the next 5 years. I don't think it's not a play for this election. It's a play for the next one, I think, to be honest with you. And I think, generally speaking, it's reasonably strategically sound. I'm not sure everybody in the party understands that and understands that that's what he's trying to do. But look, the reality is here, guys, that he is, without question, he's been the recipient of a really good situation for him at Westminster, where Labour have gone from, you know, wiping the SNP out practically at the last election to wiping themselves out in the intervening year. So, you know, Labour have shot themselves in one of their feet. But to be fair to Swinney, he's the one who shot them in the other foot. I mean, this wouldn't be the same if Swinney and Forbes hadn't taken control of the party and the government. Yes, they've been aided by their opposition, without question. They've been aided by Reform as well, taking a lot of the attention and votes from their opposition. But they have performed competently. And we had a situation where the sort of, you know, kind of middle Scottish voter looked at the Scottish government and saw them as being incompetent. Now, they might still look at the Scottish government and see them as being not very effective, but I don't think they see them anymore as being incompetent. And I think that's one thing that Swinney has undoubtedly achieved over the last year or so. He's the only show in town for the SNP. So there's no point in them, you know, there's a limit to what they can do and how much they complain. He is the only show in town, not just for this election, but I increasingly think he might be the only show in town throughout the whole next term of government.
Wow. Just to mention then, we've got Ross Greer and Gillian Mackay from the Scottish Greens coming up on the podcast in the next few minutes. And one thing we're going to talk about is the extent to which pro-Palestinian marches have taken place over the course of the last few days, both around the Manchester anti-Semitic terrorist attack at the end of last week, and of course on the second anniversary of the October the 7th terrorist attack perpetrated by Hamas against Israel 2 years ago. Andy, one of the parts of this that's really intensified debate in Scotland is John Swinney speaking just a few days ago, in fact, where he was addressing a crowd. One of the organisers was from Glasgow Friends of Israel. This was outside the Scottish Parliament. Swinney was introduced. There are heckles from the crowd at the start of his speech. A few minutes in, he then says, "I support the recognition of a Palestinian state as part of what he calls the necessary route to secure peace in the Middle East." And then the crowd responds, and the First Minister is drowned out in this video that's filmed from the crowd with calls and chants of "shame on you." It was a pretty, I think hostile is the right word, actually, encounter for the First Minister just a few days ago for John Swinney. And, you know, he's kind of said, well, look, I need to make the argument for a two-state solution and for the recognition of a Palestinian state at any opportunity. I wonder if it was just slightly mistimed in the context.
I mean, we'll obviously talk about this in a lot more detail with Ross and Gillian in a second. I think what you say and when you say it and where you say it are very important in this issue at the moment. The caveat I would put on this is that I didn't see the whole speech. And, one of the great dangers in society at the moment is people looking at social media clips,
Sure.
which fail to provide adequate context for everything that has gone on. For all I know, John Swinney could have been speaking for an hour, and I saw 2 minutes of it on a clip. So I think that is important to understand the context, and I don't fully understand it because I don't know what he said before, and I don't know how long it was, and all that sort of stuff. I suppose what I do wonder is, given the timing, because it was I think I'm right in saying it was a vigil for although it was a couple of days in advance, it was a vigil, I think, for the anniversary of the Hamas attacks.
Yeah.
I agree with John Swinney about Palestinian statehood and about the recognition of it. I'm a bit, I think it's a judgment call. I think there are difficulties with it, but on balance, I do agree with him on it. I do wonder if, examining the whole context of what he said, I do wonder if it was necessary for him on that occasion to talk. There are lots of occasions to talk about that statehood issue. I wonder whether it was necessary for him to do it on that particular occasion after the synagogue attack, just before the anniversaries. In the cold light of day, it may not have been the ideal time to mention it. But as I say, I want to strongly caveat that by saying social media videos don't provide good context for commentary on these things.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Thanks for that. Right, do stay with us then. We've got Ross Greer and Gillian Mackay in a joint appearance on this podcast coming up next for you. This is the Holyrood Sources podcast. Find us on YouTube if you'd like to watch along. You get full episodes on there. Just search for Holyrood Sources. Or you can follow us on X. You can find our clips on TikTok. And crucially, subscribe to our mailing list at holyroodsources.com. I'm just going to say this much. You'll soon be finding out about our end-of-year pub quiz via the Holyrood Sources mailing list, which I'm very excited about. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen, and you will find out first on the mailing list. So go and subscribe now at holyroodsources.com. And of course, do keep in touch. Share your thoughts as you're listening. The WhatsApp number is 0333 404 6507. We'll be right back after this.